Hi, and welcome to Critical Reading Quick Tips with Academic Coaching here at the University of Idaho. So when we talk about critical reading, one of the things that I like to remind students about is that your readings are incredibly important for helping you build an informational knowledge base for your classes. They're a great way to learn about content for projects or just to get more involved in the field that you're going into. So today we're going to talk about some tips on how to really make those reading assignments stick with you, some great ways to tackle dense material, and just some general tips on critical reading. So first, what I want you to think about is, what do you do when you're assigned a reading for a class? I know for me, for the first 2 years of school, it was that I didn't really do them. And that's something that I hear from a lot of students. And I get it. You're already in class, you're getting a lot of content there, you're having to do homework assignments outside of it, you've got a bunch of classes. It can be really hard to add on reading assignments on top of that. But what I want you to keep in mind again is that those reading assignments are assigned for a reason, and they're there to really help you out with the course content. So when you first get that reading assigned to you, embrace it. Embrace the reading, figure out why it is that it's going to help you. So number one, it's to help acquire knowledge. It helps you develop an understanding of the material, introduces you to new ideas and terms. Additionally, it allows you to gain more exposure to the class material. So this is going to help you get ideas for major assignments and projects, and it's going to help you critically think and process information and apply the skills that you're learning in class. So we want to understand the purpose of the reading. So if something is assigned to you before class, it's usually a way to introduce ideas, concepts, formulas, general topics before class happens. This helps ground the lectures, and it helps you gain the basics before going into class. So if you're like me and you've ever gone into class and felt wildly confused by what your instructor was telling you, a great way to reduce some of that confusion is to do a reading ahead of time. Just seeing those ideas once before going into lecture can really help them stick and make more sense when you're learning them more in depth from the expert. If you get a reading assigned after class, this is usually there to help clarify concepts and help you make connections with the lecture material and things outside of it. Additionally, this helps reinforce class time. And if there was something that a professor couldn't go too in depth in due to time constraints, and a reading assigned after class may help dive into that material a bit more for you. So before you sit down to do your reading, you want to preview that material. So you want to look at the preface or the introduction, and this will help you understand what the text is about. This is exceptionally true for like articles or chapters in a textbook. If you're reading more of like a chapter in like a novel, it's not going to have the same thing, but you already might have a good idea of what it is about. If possible, check out a table of contents, chapter summaries, section headings, again, just to get a general overview of what's going to be coming up in that reading. And from that general overview, you want to develop some questions about the material. Those can be really general of just like, what is that term? Or it can be very specific of like, how do I use X to understand Y? Then when you're reading, you can reflect on those questions, and it's going to help you guide your readings and make them a bit more productive. So how well do you retain information from your textbooks or articles that you're reading for class? I want you to take a moment, pause, and think about that question. Now, if you're me and you were just reading them because you knew you had to and you had to get them over with, then that material may not have stuck with you really well. But what we're going to talk about next is reading with focus and really engaging with our text. And when you're reading with focus, you're going to retain more of that information. So one way that we can do that is to mark up the text, whether that's definitions, examples, connections. You want to highlight, underline, star things that really stick out and are important to you. Those might be formulas, definitions, main ideas, key concepts, anything that's really critical. In addition to marking up the text, you also want to take notes. So keeping a list for yourself of any important concepts, transferring formulas over, writing a quick summary at the end of the reading, any way that's going to help you reinforce those ideas. It's also going to help you return back to it later and have like a quick, 5-minute summary for yourself that you can look at first instead of having to read the entire thing over again. So when it comes to highlighting, one of the things we want to keep in mind is that we're only highlighting the key and important things. So the best way to do that is to read the entire thing first and then go back and just highlight those things. Because as you're reading it, you might be like, oh, that's important. Oh, that seems important. Oh, that seems important. But by the end of the whole thing, you realize that there were maybe only like 3 key takeaways, but you've highlighted the entire paragraph. And when you highlight everything, you actually highlight nothing. So read it first, then return and highlight. It's going to make sure that you're actually pulling out the most critical information for yourself. Next, read out of order when needed, when possible. So oftentimes when we're given something to read for class, we tend to take the approach of, cool, I read from start to finish. And 99% of the time in life, that's true. Normally we don't pop in directions halfway through. But when it comes to really dense academic material, reading out of order can actually be a lot more helpful. So what I like to do is I start with the intro or the abstract. So we're thinking about like an academic article. It's been published in a peer-reviewed journal. Normally, the intro and the abstract are going to tell me the big picture. They're going to tell me what this person researched, any major findings that they had. It's all going to get there so that I have a good view of what's coming up. Then I'm going to jump to the conclusion. I'm going to go straight to the punchline and I'm going to figure out what it is that they found. This is going to contextualize the entire article for myself. So then when I read the background sections, I can see, oh, I needed this info to understand the big picture here. So this is why they're including it there. And then finally, I tend to read the methods or analysis section. And that's just because those sections tend to be the most technically difficult. So if someone's doing a really intense experiment, the methods section is just going to be really dense and it's all useful information. But if I read it first before I know what the conclusions are, it might just confuse me because I'm wondering, well, why are they doing that? That seems strange. What's the point of this process that they're using? But if I already know what those conclusions are, then I can better understand why they set up their experiment in a certain way. So in general, I read articles the first time completely out of order, and then I go back through and do a second reading from start to finish. And I have a lot better idea of what's going to happen. I know what the big findings are, and I can appreciate all of the small details that are in that article in the second reading. So another thing you want to do when you're reading with focus is to clarify any confusing material. So you want to reread anything that you weren't sure about on the first read through. You're going to write out questions for yourself, look up definitions, check out your glossaries, your footnotes, or ask a classmate or your instructor for some help. Remember, the point is to build a foundation of knowledge, so you really want to dive into these things that you're tackling. You want to develop a system for your reading. So this is going to look different for everybody. We've already talked about one system, which is reading out of order for scientific articles, but there are lots of other systems for tackling different types of reading. One really basic system is just to come up with kind of symbols and a legend that you use for all of your readings so that you know what you're highlighting, what it means, kind of the importance there. So first, you want to consider what it is that you're getting out of the reading. Then you're going to keep the number of symbols or things to a minimum so that you're not overwhelming yourself with a really marked up text. And then you're going to adjust that system as needed for different readings. So, with that in mind, if you normally have a system where you like highlight key terms or definitions, but you get to a textbook that includes an entire list of key terms at the start of the chapter, then you probably don't need to highlight them as you're reading through it because you have that list that you can reflect on. So if we look at this example, our system includes stars around a thesis statement, so pulling out that key point. Yellow highlights are for terms, important terms that we want to know. And then I annotate any information covered in class so that I can build that connection to things. So this person has gone through and read this paragraph. They're saying, hey, here's this fact that I learned in class and how it connects to what I'm reading in my assignment. So this is a really great, basic, simple system. There's a lot of other systems that you can come up with for critical reading. So if you're interested, reach out to academic coaching to learn more. All right, so we prefaced our reading, we've read the thing. What do we do next? So we want to revisit that material. And one of the ways that we can do that is to write a summary for ourselves. So you read the thing and then you go back through and you figure out like, okay, what are 3 to 5 sentences that just sum up this entire reading that I did? You can create some questions and try to answer them with your summaries. Again, this is helping you really engage with that material. You want to reread any important sections. So maybe it was a philosophy paper and there is a paragraph that just really covers kind of the key point, the main takeaway of a philosopher. So you want to go through and reread that again for yourself so you really understand what they're saying. You want to look for where any emphasis is placed. So whether that's bold or italicized or highlighted, we're going to reread those sections as well because the author has told us that they are very important. And then if you write any sort of like notes on the text itself, you want to make sure that you copy those down into your notebook along with your summaries so that you have all of your notes in one place. And then after we've done all of this stuff on our own, we want to actually discuss that material. So maybe that looks like connecting with your professor or TA to clarify any questions or just to discuss what was happening. You might want to summarize that material to someone unfamiliar with the text, just to challenge yourself, give yourself a bit of a like fun engagement activity there. Or you can turn to your peers and summarize seek some extra clarification. So a couple of great options are going to drop-in tutoring or SI Pass if your class has it. Just saying like, hey, I read through this text, it keeps mentioning this term. Is that going to come up in class later? Is it something that I should, really dive more into, or is it not super important for this class? So checking in with those peer resources is amazing. Next, you want to reread with some supplemental sources or just seek out supplemental sources. So, when you're reviewing those sections that are confusing, maybe there is another article that it links to or some section of a different textbook that could explain it a bit better. I'm a big fan of finding videos on YouTube that help better explain some of the topics in my classes. So there might be summaries, an explanation of the text. It might even be an entire lecture from another university where someone's explaining a bit more about that specific article. So definitely seek out some of those resources if that's one of the ways that you learn well. And then look up any supplemental readings. So, if there's linked articles, but also if there's something more broad. So one example that I have here is Beginning Theory, an Introduction to Literary and Cultural Theory. And this is sort of a touchstone, a really important book for folks who are in any sort of literary theory field. So if you're getting an English degree, this might be an often referenced source for you to really check out and gain a lot more familiarity with content in the field. Alrighty, so this is just a brief overview of critical reading. If you're currently going through a class that has a lot of reading assignments and you want some more help on how to organize those readings, how to tackle them, how to really get information out of them, then definitely reach out to academic coaching. You can search us on vandalstar.uidaho.edu to make an appointment, or you can email acadcoaching@uidaho.edu. A coach would be happy to meet with you one-on-one and help get all of the support that you need for critical reading or any other college success strategy that you're interested in. But with that, thank you all so much for listening, and I will talk to you later. Bye.